Have you ever wanted to make a cabinet like this and thought it was too complicated? Using a mortise and tenon joinery, or as some people say, slots and tabs, is not very difficult to do. And today I'm going to show you exactly how to do it. It's really easy on the CNC machine. I'm Papa, and over the last 6+ years, I have produced nearly 800 videos that take what seems to be a complicated process and make it into an easy task that you can take into your shop and get professional results. Today is no different. I'm going to take this basic cabinet using the mortise and tenon joints, or as some people refer to it, slots and tabs, and show you just how easy it is to be able to design this in the VCarve Pro and cut it out on the CNC machine. Today, I'm going to be using the Fox Alien XE Pro 8040 to be able to cut this out. I don't need to worry about having to try to do this all on one big sheet because I have a lot of scrap material that I want to be able to use up. This is the perfect size machine to be able to do this project. I'll do one piece at a time, cut it out, put the next component on with the appropriate size of the plywood, and then cut that out. I've opened up VCarve Pro and I'm going to create a new file. Now this is going to be a single-sided job, and as far as the size of this material, I really don't know exactly the size yet, so I'm going to put in 700 by 700 millimeters. The thickness of the material will be 12.2, and that's based on the measurements that we've taken using the jig in a previous video. We are using the millimeters today, and I'm going to be using the machine bed to be able to do the Z0 position. I'm also going to set this up where we're working off of the center point. Later on, when we get ready to do the tool paths, I'm going to switch over and use the bottom left corner. But using the center point is going to be much easier to be able to do the design work. So with that, I'll hit OK. The first thing I want to do is come up here to the draw rectangle, and we're going to select that, and I'm just going to sketch in a rectangle. Now, as far as the size of this rectangle, I want to make this on the x-axis 460 millimeters, and on the y-axis, I want this at 220 millimeters, and we'll hit apply. So there is the basic shape that we're going to start with the first shelf. Now I want to be able to have this centered into the material, so we'll come up here to the alignment tool and we'll just select the center to the material and we'll close that. Now this gives me the references that I want to be able to use to work with. The next thing I want to do is create the tabs. Now we're going to have 2 tabs in here, so I'm going to need another rectangle. I'm just going to come right up above right now and draw out a rectangle. So what size do I actually need this tab? I need to be able to have it stick through the thickness of the material, and that is 12.2. So I need to do that on both sides. So that is going to be 24.4 for a total of this length is going to be 486.4 millimeters. And we'll hit tab. And the thickness of this on the y-axis is going to be 50 millimeters, and that's going to be consistent throughout the project. So I'll hit apply, and then I'm going to take this and close this out, and we'll take this and slide it right down into this spot. Now you'll notice that this will snap right into the center. Now that takes care of the x-axis. I also need a second one, so I'll hit Control-C and Control-V, and we'll slide that one down, and we'll let it snap into place also. Now we need to be able to figure out how we're going to set this up on the y-axis. The easiest way to be able to do that is I know that this is 220 millimeters. These are 50 millimeters each, so that leaves the difference of 40 millimeters between these two. I'm going to come over here to this tool right here, and this is the Move Select tool. I want to be able to have this where I can click on this tab. I'm going to come up to the absolute, and I want to have this on the bottom row. It doesn't matter either one because it's going to reference off of this line, and I want to reference off my center line. I want to be able to have this from this point to this point at 20 millimeters. So I'm going to put in right here 20 millimeters, hit apply, and that will move it down exactly where it needs to be. At this point, this distance is 40 millimeters. This will be 20 millimeters to the center line, and then we'll move this one right here. Now I want to click on this one and show you how to set this one up. So we're going to come back over here, and we need this from 20 millimeters from the center line down to this point. To do that, we're going to come over here to the anchor point and select the top. Now we're going to reference off of the top of this line. So I'm going to put in a negative 20 millimeters and hit apply, and that's going to take care of it. So at this point, I have 40 millimeters here, 40 millimeters in the center, 40 millimeters here. And that literally takes care of the shelf. Now we have some extra lines that we need to get rid of. So I'm going to come over here to the cut tool and we'll clip these out. Control Z, we'll put that back in. Clip on this. Do the same thing over here. And this is now completely done. Now you do want to make sure that you have this rejoined the trim sections. So make sure that that's checked. But at this point, this component is finished. Now I'm going to need a total of 4 of these shelves. Now that this component is finished, and I know that I need 4 of them, I want to highlight this and I want to hit Control C and Control V. That will give me a duplicate, and that will be set aside because that'll be 2 of the shelves. Now what I have left is that same shelf, but on 2 of them, I need a slot right here in the center. So let's go back to the rectangle tool, and I'm going to put in just a slot. And what size do I need? I need that slot to actually be on the x-axis 12.2 millimeters, and I need that again on the y-axis. It'll be 50 millimeters, and I'll hit apply. With that done, I'll close it, and I'll take this slot and I'll come right down here and center it. And you can see how that snaps right into place. So I know that is exactly in the center. Now this shelf is actually complete, and I know that using these center lines, everything's exactly where it needs to be. I do want to zoom in because there's one more thing that we need to do. We need to be able to put in the dog bones in this. To do that, we'll come over here to this fillet tool. We'll click on it. I know that the radius of the tool that I'm going to be using is 3.175 millimeters, and that's an 1/8 inch bit that I'm going to be using. I'm going to use the regular dog bones. And with that done, I'm going to come over here, and you'll see as I get close, that check mark shows up. And that's all I need to be able to do. It doesn't have to touch this. I just need to have it where that check mark will come into play. And now the dog bones are in place. I can close this. I'm going to zoom back out, and now I want to be able to group this all together. And we'll click to group. Now you see how the color changed. This is now a component. Now for all of the slots that I do, I'll be putting these dog bones in, but I'm not going to take the time to show on each and every dog bone that needs to be placed in there. It would just take up too much time. And I want to come back to the rectangle tool, and we're going to make another rectangle. Now this rectangle needs to be 600 millimeters on the x-axis and 220 millimeters on the y-axis. And we'll hit apply. Also, we'll close this out, come back to the alignment tool. Let's make sure that it's dead center, and now it is. So now we have something to be able to work with. Now at this time, we need to be able to put in all of the slots to make up the shelf. Now I need to be able to put in those slots. So I want to take this one right here, this shelf, and hit Control C and Control V. And that will give me another shelf to be able to work with. Now the only thing I really need is this end where the slots are. So we're going to have the original over here, and I want to close this out now. I want to highlight this, come down to the edit node mode, and I want to come right in here, and it can be anywhere, and I want to be able to cut the vector and do the same thing down here, cut the vector. All right, so now this is going to be a separate section. This area right here I don't need, I'll cut it. And that's it. So now let's zoom back in. I want to highlight this area, and I want to bring that down into this area. Now we're going to work off of our center and come out this way to be able to put these tabs in. Now the first thing I want to do is align it. Let's zoom in closer where you can see that. Now right now, if you look at that, it should snap right into place. And to be able to make sure that that's happened, I wanted to be able to go back to the alignment tool. And I want to be able to select on this item, then select on this top line, and I'm going to come to the inside edge. And you can see, again, the snapping of this center point worked, but this verifies that it's exactly where it needs to be. Now I need to be able to make my slots, and they're going to be this size right here. So I'm going to take my rectangle, and I'm just going to drop one in close right here, and let's put in the measurements. I know that slot needs to be 12.2 millimeters by the 50 millimeters, and we'll hit the apply. I want to make a copy of this one, so Control C and Control V, and we'll take and slide this down here. So let's take this first tab and let's slide it right over to here. Now this snapped to the center on the y-axis, but I wanted to make sure that it did not snap to the x-axis so I could show you this. So I want to click on the tab itself, hold down the Shift key, click on the object itself, and this time we're going to align it to the inside edge to that point. And you can see how that gives you the perfect alignment. Now I zoomed in real close so you can see it, and this snapped right over here to where it needs to be. The only thing I need to do is align it to this. So we're going to come back to the alignment tool, and I'll click off of it, so I'll show you the whole process. We'll click on the tab, hold down the Shift key, click on that, and hit this. And that brings it over exactly where it needs to be. And we'll just close that. Now you can see both of the tabs are exactly where they need to be. The next step is I want to group this together. And I want to group it. We'll close this, come over here to the Group tab, and now we have one object. So now I can move this anywhere that I want. So I want to be able to reference off of my center line again. I'm going to zoom out just a little bit, and we're going to start putting in the tabs. And you can put these tabs anywhere that you want, depending on the size of the shelf that you want. Now if I put this right into this area, this will identify the first location of the tabs. Now if I want to see exactly where that is, bring over a guideline and you can see it was minus 220. And again, you can see the minus 220 there in that box. So that's two ways that you can see exactly where it's located. Now I don't need this guideline, so I'm just going to click on this and delete it. And then I want to be able to take and make a copy of this. So Control C and Control V. I'm going to slide this down. Now at this point, let's use the Move Selection tool. I'm going to come over here and watch this. I want to be able to have this on the absolute. I want to have it on this side, and we'll make this, that's 109 on the x-axis right now. We're going to leave the y position alone, but I'm going to move this up to 120. So that's going to be a minus 120, and we'll hit apply. And you can see how that moves it right where you need to have it. So now I'm going to do the same thing. We're going to close this. What I'm going to do is make a copy of this, Control C and Control V, and we'll take and slide this down. Now if I want to keep this symmetrical, I want to take this one right here, come back to Move Select tool. We're going to make it absolute again, and we'll click on this left side, and I want to be able to apply this at the 120. So that's going to be 120, and that's going to be on the positive. We'll hit apply, and that now has equal spacing from here to here and here to there. Last thing I want to do is Control C and Control V, and we'll do the same thing again. We'll slide this down, And we're going to measure from the center point. And from the center point over to where the tabs need to be, we're going to use 210 millimeters this time. So I'm just going to type in 210 and I will hit apply. That will move it right over to where I want it, and then I can hit close. And that has all of the tabs now in place where I want them. The next step is to be able to highlight all of these tabs and the little components that we're using for the alignment. And I want to be able to ungroup them. And then I want to come in just to that little section and delete the guideline that we had, and that leaves all the tabs in place. Now I also want to put a back in here, and I want that back to be recessed so that I can have the cords hidden for as much as I possibly can. So we're going to have this set up at about a 40 millimeter depth. That should be able to handle all of the cords. But what I need to be able to do, let's zoom in. Let's come over here to this measure tool, and let's measure from right here over to this point right there to the edge of that shelf, and that's 227.8. Okay, now that I have the shelf out of the way, I want to be able to make the backing, that backboard that's going to go right into this area. So let's go up here to the rectangle tool, and we need to make that shelf, or that backboard actually. So we know that needs to be, so let me zoom back in so we can see this a little bit better. So we know that on the x-axis, that is going to be the 460 millimeters. And on the y-axis, we just measured that, and that is going to be 227.4 millimeters. And we'll hit apply. So that's going to take care of the shelf. We'll close it just like we did before. We'll hit the alignment to make sure that it's centered to the material. Close that. And now we need to bring in the tabs. Now this is created exactly as we made the shelf before. So I'm not going to go through the repetition of creating another one. We're going to skip to the end, and I'm going to show you how we're going to set this up to put the tabs in place. Okay, at this point, the backboard is completely done. Now I want to first make a copy of this. So Control C and Control V will give me a copy, and I'll set this out of the way because that is going to be a component that we'll need to cut out. Again, we're going to go over to the edit node. We're going to do the same thing. We're going to click on here. We'll cut the vector. Same thing down here. Cut this vector, and then we'll go back to this tool and cut it away. We don't need that. So at this point, we're going to do the exact same process that we used to be able to place the tabs in all across that side panel. Again, I'm not going to repeat that. Let me just show you the final step. So here we aligned it to the top of the edge to be able to give a precise measurement that we can measure down to 40 millimeters. So we can take this number of 110 and subtract the 40, and that will give you 70. So you can type in 70 millimeters. The reason it's 70 is actually from the center line of the board up to that top edge. So with that done, you can hit close, and that is the location for each of the tabs. Next, create the tabs and drop them in place as we had done before. No longer need this guideline, so we'll highlight it and cut that out. And that will leave the tabs in place. And that process is done. You now have the tabs on this sideboard. And don't forget to put the dog bones in. This is an important step that I said I was just going to skip, and we're going to move ahead. The last step is to create the divider between the shelf where I'm going to have a drawer. So I need to measure this, and with that measurement, we'll create the rectangle and be able to make this last component. Now it's back to the draw rectangle. I'm going to put my rectangle right here in the center. And now I need to be able to put in the exact measurements. We know that on the x-axis, this is going to be 220 millimeters. We'll type that in, and then we'll come down on the y-axis with that measurement that we just took. It's 77.8, and we'll hit apply. So now we have the basic rectangle. We'll close that out. Come to the alignment tool. Let's make sure we have it centered on the material. And now that we have it centered, the next step is very, very easy. Just as we did before, we're going to grab the rectangle tool and make a rectangle. That rectangle is going to be the 50 millimeters wide And then on the y-axis, we need to put in the 77.8 and then plus the 24.4. Hit equals, and that will give you the 102.2. That's another way that you can do it. Instead of just adding it manually, let the software do the adding for you. And then we'll come over and snap this right into the center. And with working with the center lines such as we have, it's all done. All we need to do now is just take the tool right here and clip away the parts that we don't need. And this component is now done. Next thing I want to establish is the tool paths. Now I have this down in the bottom left hand corner, and I still have the center point. I want to come up here to the job setup menu, and I want to come down and change the XY datum position. And I'm going to change that to the bottom left hand corner. And then we'll hit OK. And then I'm going to switch over to the toolpath menu. And of course, let's highlight this right now. And we'll close this out. What I want to do is be able to use the profile toolpath. So we'll click on that, and we're going to hit the start depth as 0. We're carving down the 12.2, which is the thickness of the material, and we're using the 1/8 inch end mill. Now it shows 16 passes. Certainly don't need 16 passes. I'm going to edit that down. We're going to put it down to 3 passes. That works real well with this bit and this material. I'm not going to do anything else here. You do want to make sure that you are on the outside cutting, because that would be critical. And then from there, name this any name that you want, and then you can hit calculate. So this is the tool path. Let's hit reset, preview all the tool paths, and you can see this is cutting all the way through. I'm not using the tabs because I'm using the glue and tape method. So let's go ahead and take this over to the machine. Next step, we will save the tool path. We need to make sure we click on this. Click on this icon right here that says Save Tool Path. You'll see that tool path is showing up right here. Then I can save this. Now because I've already done it, I'm not saving this again. But this is saved on my thumb drive, and this is what I'll use to be able to cut out this part. So let's get this part cut out, and I'm going to show you how to cut out one more part, and everything else will be exactly the same. I have the Fox Alien XE Pro 8040 all set up now with a scrap piece of wood that's large enough to be able to cut out this part. And of course, I'm using the Open Builds controller, and I'm ready to hit the start. And it begins cutting this part out. Now this part, will take 3 passes to be able to carve. And I'm also using the vacuum system on this particular one to be able to capture all of that sawdust. Now this is finishing up now on this 3rd pass, and it will come right back to the XY 0 position. So there it is, it stopped, and that part's finished. With the glue and tape method, holding this down, it holds it very secure, and it has never failed me. But this is the completed part right here. So this is part number 1. I'll reset up everything, find another piece of scrap material, and we'll cut the second piece out. Now I said don't forget to put in the dog bones. We're going to go ahead and do that right now so I can show you exactly how we're going to cut that out. So I'm just going to go through, click on all these corners, get these in, and I'll be right back, and we'll show you how to set up the tool paths on this process, because these tabs will get cut on the inside, and of course to cut out the side panel itself, we'll be cutting on the outside. The dog bones are now all in. Now if you remember, I had grouped this whole entire panel together, and that made it easy to be able to move around. But when I was placing the dog bones into position, you have to ungroup it. With all the dog bones in place, I now want to be able to highlight all of these slots. All of this I still want to have grouped together. So with all of them highlighted, I'll hit the group icon, and now those are all one component. Now the outside of this panel is still not grouped together, but that's okay because that's literally setting up for having the 2 tool paths that I need to create. Now the first tool path that I want to do are these slots. So I'm going to come right back up here to the profile tool path, Same thing, 0, 12.2, 1/8 inch end mill. We're going to edit the passes down to 3. And this time we're going to cut it on the inside. Very important, because otherwise the slots will be the wrong size. Everything else is fine. So we'll come down. Again, we'll just type in the word slots. It doesn't matter what you name it, whatever works for you, and we'll hit calculate. We'll hit reset because our previous one is there, so that is now gone. So all of those are in position. So let's close this out now, and we'll go back and we'll highlight this one, and let's do the outside. All of this is the same. We'll need to edit the pass. We'll put it in 3. We'll hit set pass, okay. We're cutting this on the outside this time. And we'll do this as, well, we'll just leave it as profile for now. And we'll hit the calculate. Now we'll reset and preview all of the tool paths. And you can see now everything is cut out. When it comes time to saving the tool path, we'll close this, select it, and now you see the slots. That'll cut out first. The profile for cutting out the entire panel will cut out second. So I can save this, and again, it'll be saved to the thumb drive, and I'll use that to be able to take it to the machine. You can see at this point that all of the slots are cut out, and I'm in the process of cutting out the full panel now. Again, this was 3 passes to be able to do this, and it's actually running both tool paths. You can do that when you're using the same bit. And I set it up so that the slots were cut first, and then the outside cut out so that everything stays right in place. And again, this glue and tape method holds extremely well. It's time to be able to assemble this cabinet. And what I'm going to do is start with this divider on these bottom 2 shelves. And so that will just drop right in there. I'll put this other shelf right on top of it. And it's a nice snug fit. And that's one of the things that I really like about building cabinets this way. I can actually test fit everything, and I know that it's going to fit together and it's going to hold extremely well. And I don't have to worry about, at this point, glue and nails and trying to keep everything square. These tabs and these slots fit in absolutely perfectly. This back drops in, and you can see it's firmly against that shelf, and that's what I want. Now I put in the top 2 shelves, and again they just drop right in place. And then the last piece is that other panel. Now that other panel is a little bit tricky to get in there because you've got to line up every one of these slots. And with this is going to take just a little bit of the rubber hammer to just tap everything in place. But the first step, of course, is just slide these shelves over and get everything aligned right at those slots. Once it's all aligned, you'll see just how easily it is for these to go in place. Now I'm filming this in real time. I'm not doing anything to speed up the video. This is real time, and this is working out extremely well. So at this point, this cabinet is put together as a test fit without any glue and without any nails, and it holds together extremely well. I really like having this type of construction to be able to make cabinets in the shop. Well, there the shelf is completely finished, and I love how it turned out. I love using these tabs and the slots to be able to make the cabinets. The only thing that's left now is to take all the chargers, the drills, the batteries, and get it all loaded up onto this cabinet and get it installed onto the wall. This is a fun build to be able to do. I hope you learned a lot, and leave me a comment and tell me what you're doing in your shop.